Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel for another true crime story on Evenings with Eva. I am your host Eva, and in today's case we will be discussing the 25-year-old unsolved disappearance of Celina Mays, who at the time of her disappearance was 12 years old and 9 months pregnant. Yes, you guys heard me right, 9 months pregnant at 12 years old. I hadn't heard about this case until recently when CBS Investigates had ran a piece on it for the 25th anniversary of her disappearance. And when I tell you guys that this case sent me down a serious rabbit hole, I wanted to know what happened to this girl. So I'm gonna apologize in advance if it seems like I'm all over the place in this story. This case is crazy and it has a lot of different characters and components, but I tried my best to make it a condensable, easy to understand story. So if you enjoy this case, please let me know in the comments section below. I'd love to hear your theories on what you think happened, and yeah, let's get into it. Today's story takes us to Willingboro, New Jersey. Willingboro is a township in New Jersey and a suburb of nearby Philadelphia. This is where 12-year-old Celina lived with her father and several other family members in a Crestview Drive home. The evening of December 15th, 1996 was no different than any other. After the family got home from a church service, they all sat down and enjoyed a bowl of ice cream. Around 11 p.m., a very pregnant Celina got up. She put her empty bowl in the sink. She gave all of her family a kiss goodnight, and then she reportedly told her cousin, "Thanks for everything," before heading up to bed for the night. The next morning, Celina's 4-year-old sister was sent upstairs by her father to wake Celina up, but when the child got upstairs, Celina was nowhere to be found. It seemed as though Celina or somebody had put pillows and sheets underneath a blanket to make it seem as though Celina was still there sleeping if somebody had popped their head in the middle of the night. But other than the fact that Celina was nowhere to be found, nothing else in her room was out of the ordinary. She had left behind her purse, she left behind her CD player, she left behind her prenatal pills, and she had left behind other things that she would have needed as she was 2 weeks away from her delivery date. But before we get farther into this story, let me tell you a little bit more about Celina and her background. Celina Janette Mays was born on May 28, 1984 to her father, Crescenzo C.J. Mays, and her mother, Lynn Vitale. From the beginning, Celina's life was not really an ideal one for a child. Her father, who was a musician at the time of her birth, admittedly had a drug and alcohol addiction, and I believe that her mom was an exotic dancer at the time of her birth, and she too had her own issues with drug addiction. The two of them reportedly had a very tumultuous relationship, with Lynn's family basically accusing CJ of being super violent towards Lynn. In 1986, when Celina was just 2 years old, the couple decided that they wanted to move from Florida to Palmyra, New Jersey. But in 1990, when Celina was just 6 years old, the couple decided to split for good. Celina's mom cleaned up her life and beat her addiction, and by 1992, she was working a steady job at a Palmyra school as a custodian. And she was just so excited and grateful that she was able to provide a good and steady life for her and Celina. Sadly, in 1994, Lynn would suddenly die from a brain aneurysm, and Celina's life changed forever. And understandably so, she's only 10 years old when her mom passed, and I could imagine for any little girl, it's just so hard to not have your mother in your life. I personally lost my mom when I was 12 years old. And it doesn't matter what age you lose your mom at. Losing your mom is hard to anybody. Celina took her mom's death very hard, and understandably so. They were inseparable. Whenever you would see Lynn, you would see Celina right by her side. Whether it would be feeding a neighbor in need or volunteering at a local cancer drive, anywhere you saw Lynn, you were going to see Celina right next to her. At the time when Lynn was still alive, she did not like Celina to go visit her father after they separated. Although CJ had stopped doing drugs and alcohol, claiming that his newfound faith had helped him with that, Lynn felt as though CJ's newfound faith was radicalizing him. And after doing my research on this story, girl, you were right. After Lynn's death, Celina stayed with a few of Lynn's friends temporarily while her mother's side of the family fought a nasty custody battle with CJ over the guardianship of Celina. Lynn's family argued in court that CJ was violent, citing his domestic abuse allegations and his drug use and his criminal history. CJ rebutted by saying that ever since he found his newfound faith, that he no longer does drugs, he does not partake in alcohol, and he's just all around changed his life. And apparently a judge agreed with him because CJ ultimately won custody of Celina. And shortly after this, Celina moved in with her father and several other family members into a small Willingboro home. And when I say a small home, yeah, it's a regular sized house for a regular family, or even a family where there's maybe like 5 kids and some kids can share a room. No, there were 12 to 15 people living in this house at one time, guys. 12 to 15 people in this house at one time. I can't even imagine how that smells. For some reason, that just sounds like it smells so funky. I can't imagine 15 people in one house at one time. That's insanity. But before I get back into the story of Celina, I need to tell you guys about Celina's aunt, Sarita Smith, because you guys are going to be hearing this woman's name a lot throughout this video. So I thought that I would give you a quick breakdown of who she is. And a quick disclaimer, this woman is a literal piece of Sarita Smith is CJ's sister. I don't know if she's his older sister or younger sister, but nonetheless, that is his sister. Sarita was the founder and pastor at Gospel of Christ Ministries, Inc., located in Mount Holly, New Jersey. And from what I could gather, in 1991, her church was removed as a member from a larger Pentecostal denomination. So the larger denomination located in Jefferson, Indiana, was called Christ Gospel Ministries International. I'm sorry guys, these church names are very long. And they are a denomination of about 1,100 members. And I'm sorry if I sound like I have no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to churches or denominations. I'm not religious, so I'm trying my best. So from the tea that I could gather, they basically kicked Sarita out of their church group due to the complaints that they were getting on the way that she ran her church. They basically also tried to take away her right to use their name, and that's why her church is called Gospel of Christ Ministries, and their church is called Christ of Gospel Ministries. You see what she did there? She was like, oh, you're gonna try to take away the name from me. I think not. An attorney for the Indiana Church Organization said that they found at the time Smith's philosophy of church leadership and her management of financial matters to be incompatible with our philosophy and policies, end quote. Long story short, the church in New Jersey was ran like a dictatorship, y'all. Some of the members said that Sarita ruled with an iron fist. And apparently, this was the same way that she ruled her house. The same house that Celina just had to move in with her father. Sarita's church initially came under fire in the 90s for allegedly brainwashing its members and keeping its members in a cult-like situation. Church members were living in crowded conditions, as well as being forced to sell pretzels and Mary Kay products to financially support the church. And that part made me laugh, because how do you force somebody to sell pretzels? That kind of like made me like, what? Selling pretzels? Who wants to buy pretzels? The church caught scrutiny when they accused 2 of its members' mothers of trespassing when the 2 mothers came to a church service to check on their daughters. And I imagine as a mother, if you hear that somebody is brainwashing people at a church that your child attends, you're gonna wanna figure out what's happening, and you're gonna wanna make contact with your child. And after I tell you this next part, you're gonna understand why these ladies wanted to go in there and check on their kids. At the time that Celina moved in with her father, her dad was working as a bookkeeper and accountant at this church. Meaning Celina was now being raised in a church with some very strict beliefs. One of these beliefs being that all of the church's children are schooled within the church. I wanted to read you guys a little piece of an interview from a former member who left the church just years before Celina had disappeared. And he left the church because Sarita tried to cause friction between him and his mother. Mind you, this man was a practicing member of her church or cult, and his mom was not. So Miss Sarita tried to cause division between this man and his mother because although she did not follow Sarita's teachings, this woman was bad. She tried to cause dismay between this man and his mother, and in the end, he decided to leave the church. He said the fact that most of the children are schooled within the church supports his claims of it being a cult-like setting. He said, quote, "They didn't want those children exposed to anything else." I also feel the need to add in that each church service was about 4 hours long, guys. So, I don't know about you guys, but I have never been to a church service that was longer than an hour. And even after that hour, I'm looking at the pastor like, okay, let's go now. Sorry. So long story short, that is Sarita Smith and her church. And you guys are going to be hearing a lot about this church and this woman throughout this story. So I just wanted to give you a preview of who she is. Now back to the night of December 15th. It seemed as though Celina had just disappeared with the clothes on her back. Police immediately contacted her mother's side of the family in Michigan and Florida to see if she was with them, but unfortunately she was not there. One of the next things police did in the investigation was try to find out who is the father of Celina's child. Celina had not revealed to her family who the father of her child was. She had only gone as far as to tell her OBGYN that the boy was 16 and her boyfriend, and he was not a member of the church. In fact, Celina got upset when she learned that a DNA test done on the baby once it was born could lead to the identity of the father. In one interview, her father stated that Celina may have planned her disappearance once he threatened to get a DNA test done on the baby when it was born. Many rumors began circulating about who the father of Celina's child could be. There was even a point where her own father, CJ, had submitted to the police that he got a vasectomy years before Celina got pregnant. And I couldn't find if this was verified, but allegedly it was verified on the source that I read that on. Police then interviewed all the males that lived within the house at the time that Celina lived there. And at one point, a rumor circulated that Celina's own cousin, Sean Smith, was the father of her child. When police questioned Sean, he adamantly denied being the father of Celina's child, and he denied knowing anything about her disappearance. But after doing some research on this Sean Smith guy, I can see why the community was looking at him with a side eye, because in 1998, he got arrested for assaulting 2 young female members of that same church. According to the police report, Sean was having with the first victim from 1992 to 1994 and was having with the second victim from 1993 to 1995. And if you think about it, this is the time frame that 11-year-old Celina would have gotten pregnant. This same cousin is now married with 7 children by 4 different women, but honestly, I could see why everyone in the community was looking at him, because he was a child predator. Another theory about who the father of Celina's child could be came from her aunt. She suggested that the father of the child may have been a young boy that Celina had met while she was out roller skating in Camden County, New Jersey. Despite all these leads and the fact that Celina was only 12 years old, police have no information regarding the identity of Celina's child's father. And thus far, everything has just been pure speculation. Celina's life living with her mom and dad were just completely night and day. She had gone from it just being her and her mother to now her living in a 12 to 15 person household with a strict religious zealot aunt. And I could just imagine that anyone living in that situation would probably be miserable as hell. Shortly before Celina had vanished, she had a brief phone call with her half-brother. And this phone call was brief because you could hear CJ in the back screaming at Celina to get off of the phone. Her brother asked her to give him a sign that she was unhappy living there with CJ by pressing a button on the phone. And It crushed his heart to hear that phone beep from the other end. Living with her father, Celina wasn't able to have a normal childhood anymore. She was no longer the shy and happy girl that people once knew her as. The fact that Celina was only 11 years old when she first became pregnant and her family objected to an abortion just goes to show you how strict they were when it came to their religious beliefs. This also made it very urgent for police to find Celina. Since she was only 12 years old, her hips wouldn't have been developed enough for her to give birth naturally, so she needed a C-section. According to police, CJ and the church were uncooperative in the investigation looking for Celina. The police even tried to get a search warrant for the house, but they were denied, and a judge cited that the family should be treated as victims. Which to me doesn't make any sense, because if you're a detective and you're telling a judge that this family is being uncooperative in a missing persons investigation of a 12-year-old, why would the family be counted out as suspects? Because statistics show that more than likely you are murdered by somebody that you know or someone that you're close to. So why would they rule out the family like that? Like, that really made no sense to me. And another thing that made no sense to me is, if your 12-year-old is missing, why are you not cooperating with the police? That is suspicious.
I hear nothing? That's suspicious. That's weird.
Celina's mother's side accused CJ of only wanting Celina there because Celina was left a pretty large inheritance from her mother Lynn when she passed away. They accused CJ of wanting that money when Celina turned 18, but that money remains untouched till this day. CJ accused Lynn's family of just hating him because he was black. Not because he was violent towards their loved one or neglectful towards his daughter. No, it's because you're black. That makes a lot of sense, CJ. Celina's maternal aunt recalled the last time she saw the girl shortly after the 1994 custody battle. She said she felt as though the girl was living in a cult-like situation. She also said that CJ was trying to push Lynn's family away from Celina. Her aunt would send Christmas and birthday gifts and would hear nothing back from Celina. And when her aunt would call, someone would always have an excuse as to why Celina could not talk to her family. Whether it was Celina was sleeping, or she was doing something, or she was out of the house, they always made an excuse for why Celina could not come to the phone. In fact, Celina's aunt didn't even know that Celina was pregnant until the police contacted her and told her that Celina was missing. Now that I have broken down the case from what we know so far, I want to go over a few theories that people have had over the years about this case. So, both families have accused each other of hiding Celina from each other. Former members of Celina's church have accused her of hiding the girl within the church network. Although there's no evidence to support either of these claims, I wanted to read you guys a few quotes from some former church members. Dan Aubrey, a former member of the church, said, "With the way Sarita runs things, I'm sure that girl is somewhere within the group network of this church." Another former member of the church said, quote, "Sarita isn't a violent person, but she has a way of putting fear in you, telling you that her way is the way of God, and if you do not follow, you will be punished." Mayo Goldman, a former member of the church who had left a couple years before Celina vanished, said to a news reporter, quote, "They said Celina had no contact with the outside world, and that sounds absolutely right to me." Quote, "They want you to cut off all communication from the outside." Goldman and his wife Denise described the church as a place where Sarita ruled with absolute control, and where the congregation of 20 to 30 acted as one family. Goldman said that he went against Sarita's decree by marrying his wife. And since Sarita did not agree with the marriage, the next Sunday after the wedding, she brought the couple to the front of the church and began to berate them in front of everybody. She began yelling at them, "I told you two not to get married. I do not believe that this marriage will last. You two will be punished for being disobedient," end quote. They were then forced to apologize to the congregation for bringing discord for getting married. And can you guys imagine going to church and seeing somebody get screamed at for getting married by the pastor? That would be insanity. So yeah, guys, after reading all of that, I can see why people thought that Sarita ran her church like a cult. She, in fact, was a cult leader, and she was insane. Another relative of Celina believes that she may have been killed by the child's father. She believes that he may have done this to protect himself or his family. She also believes that Celina may have died due to an illegal abortion gone wrong, which didn't really make any sense to me because from all accounts, Celina was accepting of her pregnancy and she was ready to give birth. Lynn's side of the family was hopeful that Celina and her baby would turn up to them and they would welcome them with open arms and no questions asked. But unfortunately, years after Celina's disappearance and with no sign of her, they began to lose hope. Her aunt Cindy said in one interview, quote, "I had a gut feeling that she was dead and that baby was dead too." End quote. Lynn's family had went on a local talk show to talk about Celina's case and keep awareness on the case, and they were also joined by a psychic who had helped other police departments on different cases in the past. And I'm guessing she was successful because the Willingboro police actually met with her to discuss the case, and they also took her to the place where Celina lived. But unfortunately, the psychic said that she sensed that Celina and the baby were dead. The police would not publicly comment on this, but they said that they were investigating all leads in this case. Lynn's family does believe that there was some foul play in Celina's disappearance. Sarita and CJ declined to come on the show, and Sarita declined to comment if her church was ran like a cult. Which, girl, you know it was. That's why you didn't want to say anything. A few weeks after Celina's disappearance, Pastor Sarita Smith told a congregation one Sunday, quote, "She lied all along," talking about Celina. Her aunt denied knowing the identity of the child's father, and she also denied having anything to do with Celina's disappearance. She said, quote, "I can't watch anyone 24/7. Only God can do that, and I'm not about to play God." End quote. All of a sudden, Sarita. All of a sudden, you're not gonna play God. Sarita said that, quote, "Celina had the choice to flee, just as she had the choice to have intercourse and get pregnant." Guys, that part made my blood boil. This is a 12-year-old little girl. She then went on to say, had Celina been forced into activity, then she would not have hid her pregnancy for 4 months as she did. Ma'am, you are a for real. Forced into. That's alright. Ma'am. Okay. Sarita continued on by saying, the Bible says you can cry out. The Bible says you can cry out molestation. Then Sarita ended her tirade by saying that it's not unordinary that Celina did not reveal the identity of the child's father, saying that not all women reveal the father's identity, and that she sees Celina as much as a woman as she does a child. Ma'am, this is a 12-year-old little girl. What is wrong with you? Like, whoa, wow, wow, wow. Now you see earlier why I called her a literal piece of. Since Celina has vanished, there has been many possible sightings of her, some just weeks after she disappeared. Someone claimed to have seen her in Lacey Township, New Jersey, which is about an hour from Willingboro, and someone else had claimed to have seen her in Hopewell, New Jersey, which is about 40 minutes from Willingboro. But both of these sightings have been unconfirmed by the police. In 2000, a man in Midland, Texas thought that he had seen Celina when he realized that one of his employees looked strikingly like Celina. But after police did some investigating, they discovered that that woman was not Celina. In that same year, 2000, one of CJ's friends had claimed to have seen Celina in Lions Mountain, New York, but that was unconfirmed as well. And lastly, in 2002, a woman fitting Celina's description was caught on CCTV in a shop in Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey. Authorities reviewed this tape, but nothing ever came of it. Exactly 1 year after Celina's disappearance, her father told a news reporter, quote, "She's a strong-willed girl. She decided to leave. The church didn't have anything to do with this. "I want my daughter to be happy," Mays told the reporter. "I would love for her to come back and be a family, but if Celina is big and grown, I'm behind her in whatever decision she makes." Sir, this girl would have been 13 years old at this point. What are you talking about? She is big and grown. Something is truly wrong with this family. Honest to God, something is wrong with these people. CJ in the years since had lost contact with the detectives investigating Celina's disappearance. In 2019, CJ passed away, maybe knowing or maybe not knowing what happened to his daughter. Celina's brother and two sisters remain hopeful that Celina will return one day. The church that Celina's aunt ran has long been abandoned, and in 2019, the Mays family moved out of the house that they lived in with Celina. Police are still as puzzled today about the case as they were 25 years ago. According to the police, Celina's case is still looked at as a missing persons and not a homicide. They are hoping with the power of technology, someone will recognize Celina through age progression photos. And that is it, guys, for the case of Celina Mays. This case left me with so many questions, and I just wanted to go over a few of them with you guys and see what your thoughts were on them. First question, why did nobody call CPS when they realized that an 11-year-old was pregnant? I'm sorry, but if I worked at a clinic and I saw an 11-year-old child come in that young and pregnant, I'm going to call CPS. Question 2, why was she not allowed to attend public school? Is that normal for Pentecostal churches? I'm not a religious person, so if you know that answer below, can you let me know? Maybe it's just because her church was ran like a cult, I'm not sure. But yeah, I've never heard of a religion not letting you go to school. So if that's something that's a thing, let me know. Question 3. If Sarita's so controlling, how did Celina find the time to go get pregnant under her aunt's watchful eye? Because Sarita was in control of everything that everybody did in that house. My thoughts are that someone in this father's family did something to this girl. I just find it weird how him and his family were uncooperative with the police in his daughter's disappearance. I think that someone in that 12 to 15 person household Celina and got her pregnant. They somehow lured her out of the house that night and murdered her to cover their identity. When the baby was going to be born, they knew that that baby was going to have a DNA test done. But that's just my theory. For all I know, Celina could have been tired of her toxic ass family and just said, "I'm out of here. I don't want to raise my baby in this madness," and dipped. Cause I understand, her family's insane. So those are my thoughts on today's case, and I would love to hear yours in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed today's story, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week on another Evenings with Eva. Bye guys, see you next week.